Hi, everybody. I am Michael Graham, sitting in for Glenn Beck. Tonight, we begin with the mortgage crisis and the Senate's plan for a $300 billion aid package. It's a massive foreclosure bill that allows the Federal Housing Administration to back new, cheaper home loans for the approximately 400,000 bottomed-out borrowers who are now considered, get this, too financially risky to qualify for government-insured fixed-rate loans. So let me get this straight. These borrowers are too risky for the banks, but they're just fine for you and me, the taxpayers. Joining me now are Stephen Moore, who writes editorials about economics for the Wall Street Journal, and John Taylor, President and CEO of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition. Now, John, I got to tell you, as just a normal Joe Schmo taxpayer who owns a house and pays my mortgage, it seems to me that the problem we have is people buying homes they couldn't afford. Wasn't that the problem? Where's the other bigger issue here?
Well, Mike, you're hardly the average Joe Schmo, but it wasn't the problem. The problem, the interest of people wanting to buy houses, you know, that desire has always been a mainstay of the American public for a long time, since mortgages became available. What really changed was that you had lenders who were willing to say yes when they should have been perhaps saying no, or at least saying, no, you can't take on that size of house. But it also was this risk layering, multiple characteristics in loans that were really did not take into consideration the borrower's ability to pay, and created triggers down the road that put them in a situation where you pretty much knew that they were going to run into problems, and that's what we're seeing now.
Yeah, but this is what I don't understand, and Stephen, maybe you can address this. It sounds to me like, okay, banks made dumb, risky loans, dumb borrowers bought houses they couldn't afford. How does this involve me? Why am I, as a taxpayer, on the hook for $300 billion in this?
Well, I think this is the fundamental unfairness and inequity in this bill. You really hit the nail right on the head. There are something like 55 million Americans today with mortgages. 52 million of us, and I'm sure that includes you, Michael, we're paying our mortgages on time. And for a lot of people, that can be a financially stressful situation given the tough times in the economy. The question becomes, why should the 52 million people who did the right thing have to pay more taxes to pay for risky mortgages that were paid, that were taken out by both borrowers and lenders who probably shouldn't have taken out the loans in the first place? They got greedy. They should pay for the repercussions of their decisions.
John?
First off, yeah, there's a myth here. The taxpayer isn't paying anything. This program is actually paying for itself. In fact, there's some on the left who are criticizing this as being too much of a burden on the people who are going to get these loans, because the government's actually going to make $800 million on this program by 2011. So, first, let's get the facts straight. Secondly,
John, I'll make you, I'll bet you a lunch that this isn't going to bring in money for the government. I mean, you're talking about, let's be very clear. Let's be very clear on the facts. I mean, the Congressional Budget Office, Michael, says that 35% of these loans, 1 in 3 of these loans that we're going to take on and put on the taxpayers' backs, are going to go into foreclosure or in delinquency. I mean, that's not a good portfolio. That's a money-losing proposition.
Right. And, Steve, it's that same government Congressional Budget Office that said that it's going to make $800 million. So if you're going to use them as your source, use that as a fact, too. But let's be clear about one thing. The folks being helped here is really the American economy, because our economy is tanking in great part because of this mortgage foreclosure crisis, which you cannot take 7 million Americans who took out subprime loans and thought that they would be able to refinance because they were told by brokers and lenders that no problem, your house will grow in equity, you'll be able to refinance, and then they couldn't because the economy turns down, and that's what happens, and housing prices don't always go up.
John,
Wait,
the reason...
No, I want to, Stephen, I want to ask you a question. I want to impose it, because I would like to ask the question. I want to follow up on John makes a good point. Look, he's saying it'll help the economy. Why not throw some money around? Every day, the $300 billion farm bill, the gazillions invested in millions of industries. I hear the average homeowner going, hey, if they're throwing the money around anyway, why not throw some to me? Why can't I suckle on the great, welfare state too?
Well, this is the big problem with this line of thinking. I mean, we have a $3 trillion budget already. I mean, the government is throwing around money like it's paper money, and at the same time, we have hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars of liabilities. Adding to that, we're talking about, Michael, $300 billion of mortgages where the liabilities are now going to be placed on the backs of the taxpayers. How in the world is is that good for the U.S. economy to take on that kind of risk?
It is, because it's going to cut down on the foreclosures. And first off, the government is on the hook for the guarantee. But the truth of the matter is, it's banks who are making these refinancing loans, and it's the homeowners, most of whom are going to continue to pay, as most of them are, on these mortgages. So the government is going to cover any losses that occurs, but the fees, get this, these are not prime rates. These are prime rates plus additional interest on top of that. So it's not, the borrower's not even going to...
John, you know what's going to happen, though, is that what the banks are going to do...
Just this other point. They're going to add a 1.5% fee, not just the year of the closing, but every year thereafter. And now get this, as if that's not enough, this is what these, home buyers who you think are getting a break, this is what they're going to have. This is what's going to happen. Wait a minute, last point.
Here's the problem with this,
They're going to get, the federal government gets 50% of the equity that accumulates in this house beyond even the payment of the mortgage.
But those numbers aren't going to add up, because what's going to happen, Michael, is the banks are going to unload onto the backs of the taxpayers and the federal government their very worst loans. They're not going to give us the good loans. They're going to give us the loans that are most likely to default. That's what the bankers have told us.
We're running out of time, guys. I have one last question for John. If this is such a money-making proposition, why aren't banks doing it? If there's all this money to be made, why isn't the private sector? I know guys at bankers. Remember, they're greedy Republicans. Why aren't the greedy Republicans sucking up this money?
Frankly, through the Hope Now Alliance and what the administration has offered, some of this has been occurring on a voluntary basis. But actually, our proposal from our organization was precisely that. We want the banks to do that without the government guarantee, and then we guarantee what needs to be guaranteed. But unfortunately, the predictions are that there'll be about 400,000 families help with this. Now, we're looking at 3 million foreclosures in the next year. That we just in this May that just passed, 261,000 foreclosure filings. And so this bill is proposing to help 400,000. So if we don't get ahead of this problem, I will tell you that the kind of economic catastrophe that we're going to face in the next year is just...
we got to go, guys. I love it, but we got to go. So much to talk about. Steve and John, thanks. Coming up, a new poll shows Obama with a double-digit lead.